We're going to go ahead and get started today. I think we might have two classes participating. Tim Schmidt is not feeling well, so keep him in prayer this morning. Pastor is over at Next Steps, so you guys are stuck with me for the next few weeks, and we'll hopefully learn something, but we'll certainly be reminded of something. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to get started. We'll open up with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to worship you. I pray that as we read through your word, that we're reminded of truths on how you would have us live our lives, that we would be dependent upon you. I pray that you give me the words to say, that you prevent me from saying things that you don't want me to say, and that you get all the praise and honor and glory this morning. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, we're going to do something that my college professor suggested one time when I was in classes, way long ago. It feels too long ago now. So when he was talking about getting wisdom from the Bible. And he had a practice that he did for, I believe, 22 years in a row. And that would be that he read a chapter from Proverbs every single day, every single month. He would make it through the book of Proverbs. He would go the first of the month. He'd go through Proverbs chapter 1. Second of the month, Proverbs chapter 2, and you get how he goes through the rest of it. And he did that every single month for about 22 years, from what I remember him telling me. So we're going to do that today. Not go through the whole book of Proverbs in 1 month. Everyone just breathed a sigh of relief. But we're going to go through whatever today's date is, we're going to go through that Proverbs. So today we are in Proverbs chapter, a resounding 6. Yes, you guys are enthusiastic, I can tell. All right, Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs chapter 6. We're going to read through a lot of familiar verses. A lot of this you guys have already heard before, but they're going to bring out good reminders. We're going to just kind of try to figure out some of it. The first time you read it, you might be like, what? But we'll try to make sense of it as we go and take some reminders. Maybe learn something new. Hopefully just know how to walk with the Lord closer. So Proverbs chapter 6. I should probably turn there. I was turned there and then I closed my Bible. That was a mistake. All right, and we're going to begin right in verse 1. It says, My son, if thou be surety for thy friend, if thou hast stricken thy hand with a stranger, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth. Thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. Do this now, my son, and deliver thyself, when thou art come into the hand of thy friend. Go humble thyself, and make sure thy friend. Give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber to thine eyelids. Deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler. The first principle we come across in Proverbs chapter 6 is a principle of poor financial decisions. More importantly, how to confront poor financial decisions, advice to stay away from them. Solomon tells his son, he says, My son, if thou be surety for thy friend. If you're taking on the debts of your friend, that's what that word means. It means to be the backup, the one that you're willing to undertake the person's responsibility. So he says, if you're willing to take the responsibility of your friend's debt, and if you've stricken your hand with a stranger, if you've made a deal with a stranger in that sense, he says that is not a good thing. You've put yourself in a position that could be unwise because you don't know how this could end up. Now, everything could go just as smoothly as you planned, but sometimes things fall through. Sometimes your friend doesn't come through on their end of the deal, but you've made a promise. You said, okay, I'm going to undertake that burden. You need to be very careful when you enter a financial dealing, when you enter that financial promise, that you've counted the cost, that you know what you're getting into. Don't go into a financial decision blindly. Don't go in thinking, well, I feel like this might be right. I hope that this is right. Make sure you know what you're doing. You can get advice. There's plenty of people around who do know what they're doing with finances. So go to the ones who know what they're doing with finances, the one you see who is being successful in their finances. But Solomon takes a step further. He's like, okay, I know my son, and my son is probably not going to heed this first warning about don't do this. Don't enter a business deal rashly. Don't enter it without counting the cost. So what happens when you do enter it without counting the cost? Well, he says you need to take immediate action. Get it fixed. Make it right again quickly. He says, do this now, my son, and deliver thyself when thou art come into the hand of thy friend. Go humble thyself, make sure of thy friend. Give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber to thine eyelids. Deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler. Deliver yourself. He's saying, take steps, take immediate steps. And then he relates it to two illustrations back to back. He says, as a roe from the hunter. A roe is, most people believe it is a gazelle. So think of like a deer-like creature. If you've ever been hunting, you know that deer don't like to be hunted. If they hear you coming, they will run. Or as a bird from the fowler. Same principle. The birds don't stick around for you to catch them. You have to be quiet. You have to be subtle if you're going to catch a bird, because they're going to fly. They're going to do their best to stay far away from you so that you can't get them. There's a desperation in that running. There's a determination. They're not considering, will I be seen? They're considering, will I get away? Will this problem be resolved as soon as possible? When we make poor financial decisions, we need to take immediate action to correct them. Now, best case scenario, before you make financial decisions, take that right first step and get guidance, get counsel. Ask God for guidance. God gives wisdom freely. He doesn't withhold it. Check the Bible for the biblical principles of wisdom, and then ask those people around you who you know are doing their finances in a way that is God-honoring, and ask them, okay, what do you think I should do in this situation? And then after they give their advice, you take their advice and you compare it to the Bible. You don't just take it and say, oh, great, they think that's awesome, I'll do that. You need to take their advice, compare it with the Bible, and then move forward. Next subject, moving on, we get to this a principle of laziness. Kind of we see where laziness, slothfulness ends up, which none of us are going to be surprised. But let's look at it anyway. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. It's not complicated to figure out what this proverb is saying. Most of Proverbs is generally self-explanatory. There are a couple where you kind of squint your eyes for a second. Solomon gives a very simple task to the slothful individual. He says, I want you to go find an ant, and I want you to watch it. Now that seems very simple, but it's kind of concerning that Solomon was like, what task would they even be willing to do? Okay, let's have them watch an ant. That a lazy person will watch an ant, right? But when you watch this ant, observe it. Think about what it's doing. Think about how it's behaving. And you've all seen ants. You probably had them working tirelessly to enter your house, and you're working just as tirelessly to keep them out. But what does the ant do? what is an ant always doing? Every time you've seen an ant, it's working. It's going somewhere, it's grabbing food, it's preparing. It's constantly working, giving its all while it can, so that when the time comes when it can no longer gather food, that it already has enough stored up for it. It doesn't have a guide, doesn't have an overseer. An ant doesn't have to have someone constantly looking over his shoulder saying, are you going to go get that apple core? Like, you don't see that. They all work together, certainly, but the ant doesn't have to constantly be told, go get food. It just does it. It's very diligent. It's constantly providing meat for itself as food. And then you notice like those winter months. I mean, we don't see this as much in Florida. When those winter months come, we still have the ants because we still have ant weather. But if you've ever been in the north, the ants just suddenly disappear around the winter because it's just so cold outside, there's no chance they would survive if they tried. So to survive for several months, an ant colony is going to need quite a sizable storage of food. You don't get a sizable storage of food by sitting around and doing nothing. Then Solomon poses a couple questions. He's like, how long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou rise out of thy sleep? I don't know how many of you dealt with this when you were growing up. It came to me constantly because I loved sleep. But when you were sleeping early in the morning as a child, maybe you're like 6 years old, and then your mom would come in and try to wake you up. I mean, you were just like, 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. Do we really need to get up this early? For me, I was homeschooled, and I was like, what is the point of being homeschooled if you don't sleep in? Like, that defeats the purpose. We're avoiding public school for the sleeping in. We're avoiding it for a lot more than that, but this question is posed because this person is constantly sleeping. It's their hobby. It's their pastime. If this person gets to choose what they do for fun, they're sleeping. He's asking, how long are you going to sleep? You keep saying just a few more minutes before you get up, and you're going to go do things that are productive. You're going to take care of yourself. You're going to go help others. You're just constantly saying a little more sleep, just a little more slumber. I'll be fully rested. I'll be fully ready to go in just a little bit, but I just need a little more me time, a little more beauty rest, and then I'll be ready to go. And if you've ever seen someone hit snooze on their alarm clock 75 times, you know they'll never be ready to go until crisis strikes. A little more sleep, a little more slumber. And then the end result. If you continue down this path, if you continue this path of slothfulness where you're not doing the things you ought to do, well, then your poverty is coming as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. Now, this is probably one of those phrases where we kind of get a little bit more like, okay, should I read into that? What does all this mean? And it's not as complicated as it seems. As one that traveleth, this person is traveling. They're going to a destination. What happens when you leave for a destination? You arrive at that destination barring any, car accident or something. When you decided this morning you were leaving your home for church, you eventually got to church. Maybe it was just as fast as you expected, faster than you expected, took forever. Whatever it was, you eventually got to here. You eventually got to Bible Baptist Church. And that's the consequences that come upon a lazy person. They may be fast, they may be slow, but you can be sure of one thing: they will come. The second example, thy want as an armed man. You're going to think more on this side. The armed man is irresistible. When you witness a robbery, they're usually armed. And if you've ever worked in a retail or fast food or any of those places, they tell you, don't risk your life to save this. Just give it to them. Don't resist them. Just give them what they want so that we can preserve human life. Well, the same principle applies. When you're lazy, you're setting yourself up for a future that you're not going to be able to stop at a certain point. Eventually, this situation becomes unavoidable. When the robber comes and he's threatening you, you can't resist him. You can't tackle him safely. When you're lazy and the consequences of laziness come, you can't avoid them. Now you have to go through them. You have to learn the lessons the hard way. So we've seen two principles. We got a few more. Principle of making wise financial decisions. Don't enter financial decisions hastily. The principle of the consequences of laziness. Laziness has a specific ending, and if you continue down that path, it's unavoidable, irresistible. You'll eventually arrive there. And secondly, thirdly, we're going to discover that your speech and actions demonstrate your character. Verse 12, a naughty person, a wicked man, walketh with a froward mouth. He winketh with his eyes. He speaketh with his feet. He teacheth with his fingers. Frowardness is in his heart. He deviseth mischief continually. He soweth discord. Therefore shall his calamity come suddenly. Suddenly shall he be broken without remedy. You can determine a person's character by how they talk, by the actions that they take, and by the places they go. The mouth says a lot about you. What you do with your hands says a lot about you. Where your feet take you says a lot about you. And we have to be careful, one, that we ourselves are walking in a way that is God-honoring. We want to walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as the wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. But we also want to be careful when we come into contact. You know, there's a lot of people that would make great friends, and there are a lot of people who would make terrible friends. And it is our responsibility to evaluate those people, not judging them saying, oh, you're too sinful for me, but more so saying, okay, their actions, the way they live their life, inspire me to draw closer to God. That's a good thing. I want that. Or their actions make me, direct me in towards ways of sin, places I don't want to go. So I'm not going to treat them poorly. I'm not going to be rude. I'm not going to ignore them. But I'm not going to spend a ton of time with them. Pastor says it a lot. He says, like, who your friends are now is who you'll become tomorrow. It's coming. Who you spend time around is who you'll start to adopt their mannerisms. You'll adopt their sense of humor. You typically adopt their likes, their dislikes. You have a lot in common. So if you want to be someone who follows God, spend time around people who love God more than you spend time around people who love themselves. We need to go to a lost and dying world, but our fellowship, our sense where we're becoming deep and close relationships, our deepest relationships should be within the church. It should be with other fellow believers. So let's look at this, the froward mouth. This froward mouth is the sense of wicked speech. It's a perverse mouth. They're gossiping. They're slandering. They're saying things that are evil. They're saying things that steer us in the wrong direction. What's your language like? If someone were to listen to you talk, how you actually wish you could talk, would that match up with how the Bible says? Does the scriptures say that we should let no corrupt communication proceed from our mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Is that your speech? Often when we read that verse and we're like, let no corrupt communication come out of their mouth. Often when we read that, we're just like, okay, so we shouldn't be cursing. Great, got that. But it goes so much deeper than that. Because it adds on to it and it says, but that which is good to use, to the use of edifying. The measure of good speech is, does it help others around you grow? Does it build others up? So now corrupt communication isn't just, oh, you should avoid cursing. Corrupt communication is you should avoid harsh criticism. You should avoid slander, gossip. You should avoid putting others down through your speech just so you can lift yourself up a little higher. Corrupt communication is deeper, and it goes into every area of our life. It goes into complaining, the thing that we probably love to do most. So when we want others to mimic us, when we want others to follow us, because we want to be modeling Christ, is our speech something that they could do? Is our speech something someone else could adopt and you'd be like, okay, that's a good speech pattern. That is a healthy one. They're building the people up around them. Or does it go the other direction? Do you put down others? Do you gossip? Do you slander? Do you complain? We've got to watch out for those things. Matthew chapter 12, verse 35 says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things. Your speech is just an indicator of what you're storing within your heart. It's just a symptom of a real problem or a really good quality. The next idea is the body language. We see him give the idea of he speaketh, he winketh with his eyes. Your eyes tell a tale. You can tell a lot of emotions through the eyes. Eyes can be used to communicate anger, hatred, deception. They can be used to also indicate love, compassion. Your eyes are a window into your soul. And then we see that he speaketh with his feet. Where you allow your feet to go is going to speak. And then finally, he teacheth with his fingers. You're instructing with your fingers. What actions you're taking demonstrate what your core beliefs are. It's easy to say, I'm a compassionate person. It's easy to say, I care about the lost. But what are your hands doing? What are your actions? Are you actually taking steps to be a compassionate person? Are you actually helping other people come to a knowledge of Christ? Or has it just stopped with saying, I care about that, but I don't want to do anything about it? We have to be careful about that. And then we see that the destruction of this person, the perverse person, the froward man, his calamity comes suddenly, and suddenly shall he be broken without remedy. Someone who continues down this path of sin eventually has to meet the consequences. We run into this a lot. Pretty much every single time I teach Sunday school, I say this phrase, but you can choose your sin, but you can't choose your consequences. When you choose to live this froward lifestyle, when you choose to go in the wrong places, when you choose to make the wrong actions, you can do it for a while, but the consequences are coming, and you don't have a say in when or what they are. Moving on to the next principle, we have God's top 7 worst sins. We're very familiar with this, so we're going to read through it. Verse 16, these 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among the brethren. Sin of pride is first in the list of this one. A proud look. Pride can take us a lot of places we never thought we would go. When we get to that point that we believe we deserve something more than following God's commandments. It's often the beginning of sin. When you commit an action, it's because you've likely lifted yourself saying, I deserve this. I am justified in making this action even though God's law says no. Galatians 5:26 says, let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another and envying one another. We should avoid seeking the spotlight. Sometimes we're placed in the spotlight, and when God gives us those opportunities, we shouldn't shrink away. He's placed you there for a reason. But you shouldn't be desirous of the praise. Your actions should not be motivated by a desire to hear the accolades of men. Secondly, we see a lying tongue. God hates lies. That's all there is to it. God is a God of truth. He is 100% truth, and he has no toleration for lies. It's very clear. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Truth is a core attribute of who God is. Third one, hands that shed innocent blood. Murder. God hates people not recognizing the value of life. God values life, and when people find pleasure in destroying that life, it grieves God greatly. It becomes an abomination to him. The next one, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. Devising wicked imaginations, plotting what's next, plotting what evil deed you're going to do next, entertaining those wicked thoughts, allowing them to continue to take a hold on your mind, crafting sin, looking forward to sinning. It takes the idea that you are literally planning to sin. You're thinking, okay, so I've got this sin, but after that I want to go commit this sin. Crafting evil imaginations. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5 Paul's telling us that we ought to be different. He says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. We ought to be taking control of our minds. A brief thought may pop in your mind, and you have a split-second decision to make. Are you going to let it sit there, or are you going to cast it out? And then we come to another one. This one is very similar to a lying tongue, but this one goes a little further, and it says, a false witness that speaketh lies. We've moved away from a lying tongue ever so slightly. The one distinction that I see here is God hates the lying tongue, and in this one, God hates the false witness. This is the first one in the list where God moves it off of the action. The previous ones have been a proud look. He hates the proud look. He hates the lying tongue. the action of lying. He hates the heart that is devising wicked imaginations. He hates the feet that are swift in running to mischief. But here we move into, he hates the false witness that speaketh lies. We've moved to our first one where God illuminates the type of person that is an abomination to him. The next one is another type of person, he that soweth discord among the brethren. Putting those seeds of discontentment, the strife, envy, bitterness, trying to split God's church. God hates that. He hates when you're putting that discord in. A call to our actions, a call to our speech. Do they build and draw the church closer together? Or are they putting divisions in? If you're putting divisions in, take warning, because that's something that God considers an abomination. Two interesting notes that I thought of this week when I read this passage that I hadn't considered before is that out of the 7 abominations here, 6 of them were committed at the crucifixion of Jesus. A proud look. The leaders were filled with pride. They could not get over their envy of who Jesus was. And it drove them to the point that they decided they would crucify him. A lying tongue. We know the lies that went all around, trying to tell Pilate, hey, he's trying to overthrow the government. He's a threat to you. Trying to put words in his mouth to say that Jesus did and said things that he had never done. Hands that shed innocent blood. That one's self-explanatory. Jesus was pure. He was holy. He had never committed a single sin. Yet they crucified him. Feet that be swift in running to mischief. They pushed the death of Jesus so quickly. Faster than any other death that they had pursued. They were as fast as possible pursuing Christ's crucifixion. False witness that speaketh lies. We saw that. They brought false witnesses to testify against Jesus. Problem is that their false witnesses couldn't agree with each other. The other thing that I noticed when reading this passage was that there's a progression of the list of works. It actually starts at the head with the proud look. We have eyes, the lying tongue, and it slowly moves downward. And then we have hands. Then we have the heart. Then we have the feet. And at that point, it consumes the person. Now we have the false witness. The full person is included. So that was just something interesting I noticed. It just went from the top to bottom. Maybe that was, interesting. I don't know what it all means, but I just noticed that it went from eyes all the way down to the feet. All right, moving on very, very, very quickly because I appear to be out of time. So this next principle is that we ought to value our parents' instruction. Verse 20, my son, keep thy father's commandment and forsake not the law of thy mother. Bind them continually upon thine heart and tie them upon thy neck. When thou goest, it shall lead thee. And when thou sleepest, it shall keep thee. And when thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. For the commandment is a lamp and the law is a light. And reproofs of instruction are the way of life. To keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. Solomon is giving quick wisdom. He's saying, look, when you leave the instruction, when you leave the care of your parents, the first thing you should do is not to reject everything they've taught you. When you have godly parents, that's a huge blessing. Don't just abandon everything they taught you the second you have a little taste of freedom. You need to value the godly principles that they gave to you, what they taught you about love, compassion, how they taught you about Christ. That should be something that you should treasure. We ought to honor our father and mother. Their commandments, they become a light. They become a lamp. They help guide us in the correct direction. The role of a parent is to raise their child to follow Christ, to follow God, to love God. And there are plenty of situations when we leave the guidance, when we leave the care of our parents. There are plenty of situations that suddenly pop up that say, hey, why don't we ignore everything the parents taught us and do it our own way? And pretty much every person who I've met who has left their godly parents' wisdom and decided, hey, I'm going to live my own way. I'm going to live for the world. And when they come back, if they come back, they always say the same thing. It wasn't worth it. I wish I hadn't left the truths that my parents had taught me. When I was working Amazon, I worked with a young man who I barely knew, but you could tell that his relationship with his parents was not good. I don't believe he grew up in a Christian family. But when he asked me where I lived, and I was still 18 at the time, and I said, well, with my parents, he was just like, man, I wish I could have that. Children who are now adults want a good family relationship. But sometimes through actions, that relationship can be broken. Thankfully, in a Christian household, it can be restored. Well, for sake of time, I'm going to stop there. I had a few more points, and I'll run through them very quickly. Next couple of verses talk about the dangers of adultery, how adultery brings destruction in our life. God designed marriage to be between one man and one woman, and there is no allowance to break that up. Hebrews 13, verse 4 says, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. If you go down a little further, we discover a principle that good reasons don't excuse bad decisions. We read just a little bit further that says, we see a story that men do not despise a thief if he steal to satisfy his soul. That's verse 30. If he steal to satisfy his soul when he is hungry. But if he be found, he shall restore sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house. We pity the man who steals because he's just so hungered. But we don't blame him. But he still has to face those consequences. Just because he was hungered, which is a good reason to need food, doesn't excuse the bad decision to steal that food. And then the final verses 32 through 35, Solomon touches back on the dangers of adultery, the destruction of adultery, and how the consequences are simply unavoidable. That when you commit adultery, when you commit this moral infidelity, that you're bringing destruction upon your house, and that you lacked discernment, and that you lacked a knowledge of your actions and how they would be judged. So, that is the fastest recap of a half chapter. We'll see if pacing is fixed next week, but we doubt it. So we're going to go ahead and pray, and then we're going to open the doors for the rest of the peoples. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity that we've had to study the book of Proverbs real quickly. Be reminded of a couple principles that I'm sure most of us knew, but they're still helpful to just take knowledge of the ways you would have us to live, how much you truly hate sin, and how we can live more wisely and redeem the time in this day. I pray for today's service that everything honors and glorifies you, that as we worship you this morning, that we direct our focus solely to you. I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.